The issue of alcoholism is often associated with Native Americans. Why do you believe that such a parallel is drawn so frequently? Is it fair?
Well, first of all, it isn't fair. If you really look at American history honestly, alcoholism was prevalent on the frontier by whites throughout American history, and it's something that is a shameful kind of history that's not often discussed in high school or even elementary level schools. It's ignored. And so when they apply it to American Indians, it's sort of another stereotype in a way, because they're saying Indians drink more than whites, and this is impossible. I mean, if you look at the statistics, Indians drink as much or less than the overall population that they're close to. So people brought gallons and gallons of whiskey on the frontier, and they would drink the hard stuff, and then they would dilute the alcohol to sell to Indians. So even the strength of the alcohol is going to be different for Indians. Some people say that Indians are susceptible through genetics or something of that nature, but that hasn't really been proven to satisfaction of actual experts in the field. I mean, it's alluded to, and people theorize about it. But when you really get down to the science, there's no scientific evidence of it. There may be now, but I doubt it. I think how is it different than Irish people drinking? And seeing that's another stereotype, really, because it's sort of like if you can say other people are drinking, you don't have to look at your own drinking in any serious manner. As long as there's an Irishman or an Indian, then you don't have to look at your own community, your own family, your own people's consumption of these kinds of beverages. It's funny with the Boston Tea Party. They said the Boston Tea Parties were the members of the Sons of Liberty dressed up like Indians and threw tea in the Boston Harbor. They said they didn't hurt anybody except for one Irishman who was drunk. And it's interesting because often these Sons of Liberty would get liquored up before they'd go out and do these kinds of acts, and yet they're not looking at their own drinking; they're looking at this Irishman who was drunk. So yeah, it's unfair. You need to really contextualize that when you think about alcoholism. You have to look at the other white population as well and see what's going on there. They're the ones who are bringing it and importing it. Indians didn't have stills, for instance. They're the ones that. The whites are the ones that brought it onto the frontier, and they used it, and perhaps oftentimes to get people addicted to it, so that they could control an economic relationship.
Historically, designated land containment centers have typically been used by those in power to control those in the minority, such as plantations for African Americans, concentration camps for Jews, internment camps for Japanese Americans. Yet whereas each of these aforementioned containment centers had a master or guard ensuring individuals did not escape, Native American reservations were not typically guarded. In spite of this, Alexi writes of the struggles Native Americans face in leaving the reservation. How would you respond to this?
Well, if you look at a plantation, plantation actually had a I don't know if you'd call it. I don't think you could call it the same thing as a concentration camp, where there definitely was, I guess, fenced-in containment of a population. And internment camps also. A lot of ways the Japanese Americans would stay there because not because they regarded, because they wanted to show their loyalty to the United States. In Indian reservations, that's the land that's set aside for Indians to live and supposedly thrive upon. But except for example with the Navajo in the Southwest, which there was an experiment done in the late 1800s of confining a bunch of Navajos, which really kind of did resemble a concentration camp or an internment camp. most Indian reservations is the very land that the Indians are living upon that was guaranteed through treaties. So they're remarkably different, and when Alexei alludes to leaving the reservation, what he's talking about is leaving his community, his family, leaving the Indians that he was accustomed to growing up around, and moving into an alien world, which is always frightening for any group of people. It's like going to a foreign country. A lot of people think it's exciting, but once you get there, sometimes it's very difficult to understand the culture and feel comfortable and feel at home. So despite the fact that reservations or even plantations may be cruel and inhospitable places, people get used to them, unfortunately. There's been a lot of study of why didn't the African Americans revolt, and some of the conjecture is that they knew no better. They didn't know where to go until the rise of the Underground Railroad, and where they had a sense of hope and freedom and a place to go. Before that, they didn't know where they would go. Same with Indians on the reservation. Where would they go? Just escaping the reservation is like trading a group of problems for another group of problems. So it's now in terms of concentration camps and extermination mechanisms of the Jews, that's something entirely different. Some people would say, yeah, it's a slow death on an Indian reservation, but they weren't gathering people up and burning them and exterminating them in such a systematic way in a short period of time. Now, on the other hand, a lot of us believe that a genocidal pattern exists over time through warfare and disease and impoverishment that's much longer kind of extermination taking place over hundreds of years rather than just several years. And that's, I suppose, maybe that's more sinister, more underhanded, but at the same time less obvious to the casual observer of Indian reservations.
That's all the time we have today, students. Thank you very much, Professor LeBeau. We certainly appreciate and value your historical narration of these important historical topics. Thank you.